Let's talk about the 7 deadly sins not just as old church warnings, but as a blueprint for disaster when ignored by those in power. These vices, pride, greed, wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, and sloth, have shaped our culture and our sense of right and wrong for centuries. They're not just relics, they're a moral compass, especially for those who lead. When leaders treat these sins as virtues, history shows us the results: corruption, collapse, and chaos. Today, we'll see what happens when leaders weaponize these ancient warnings. This isn't just about personal failings, it's about the soul of leadership itself. So buckle up, the stakes are higher than ever. Pride, the original sin, the seed from which so many other failings sprout. It's a subtle corruption, often masked as confidence or self-assurance. But beneath the surface lies a dangerous arrogance, a belief in one's own infallibility. It's not confidence, it's the refusal to admit fault and the demand for blind loyalty. It's an insistence on being right, even when all evidence points to the contrary. This isn't strength, it's a fragile ego, desperately trying to maintain its illusion of perfection. Proverbs warns, pride goes before destruction. It's a timeless truth, echoed throughout history. The higher the pedestal, the greater the fall. Yet in politics, pride is often mistaken for strength. The charismatic leader, the unwavering voice, the one who brooks no opposition, these are often celebrated even when their actions are driven by ego rather than reason. Leaders who see themselves as infallible shut out dissent and surround themselves with yes-men. They create echo chambers where their own opinions are constantly reinforced, blinding them to reality. Critical voices are silenced and independent thought is stifled. Mistakes get buried, swept under the rug in a desperate attempt to maintain the facade of perfection. Truth is twisted, and humility is seen as weakness. Spin becomes the order of the day, and manipulation replaces honest communication. The public is fed a carefully curated narrative designed to protect the leader's image at all costs. This isn't leadership, it's idolatry of the self, a dangerous obsession with personal glory and power. And it poisons everything it touches. Corruption festers, institutions crumble, and the very fabric of society begins to unravel. Prideful leaders mock the vulnerable, dismissing their concerns and ignoring their suffering, and treat compassion as a liability. Empathy is seen as a weakness, a hindrance to the pursuit of power. Cold, calculated decisions are made without regard for the human cost. History is littered with regimes that collapsed under their own arrogance. From ancient empires to modern dictatorships, the story is always the same. When pride rules, justice and accountability are the first casualties. The law becomes a tool to protect the powerful, and the scales of justice are tipped in their favor. The lesson is ancient. Unchecked pride leads to ruin, not greatness. It's a cautionary tale that we must never forget. So when you see a leader who never admits they're wrong, who always blames others for their failures, remember, that's not strength. It's the first step toward the fall. It's a sign of weakness, a desperate attempt to cling to power in the face of inevitable decline. No amount of flag-waving can disguise it. No amount of patriotic fervor can mask the rot that lies beneath. Pride is the prelude to disaster. It's the storm cloud gathering on the horizon, the ominous sign that the end is near. And only humility and a willingness to learn can avert the coming catastrophe. Greed. It's a primal urge, a relentless craving that gnaws at the soul. It whispers promises of satisfaction, yet delivers only emptiness, an insatiable hunger for more money, more power, more influence. It's a thirst that can never be quenched, a fire that only burns brighter with each acquisition. The Bible says you cannot serve both God and money, that your allegiance must lie with one or the other. You will love one and hate the other. But in the twisted corridors of politics, greed is often dressed up as prosperity, cloaked in the guise of economic growth and opportunity for all. It's a seductive lie, spun to justify the accumulation of wealth at the expense of the many. Leaders who push policies that disproportionately benefit the wealthy, who champion tax cuts for the rich while the poor struggle to make ends meet, gut essential social programs that provide a lifeline to the vulnerable, leaving them to fend for themselves and treat public service as a private ATM, siphoning off taxpayer dollars for personal gain, aren't serving the people who elected them, they're serving Mammon, the personification of wealth and avarice. They have traded their integrity for power. Greed shows up in the revolving doors between government and corporations, where public officials cash in on their connections and expertise, blurring the lines between public service and private gain. It festers in campaign coffers stuffed with dark money, contributions from anonymous donors who seek to influence policy without accountability. When personal enrichment is justified as success, when the accumulation of wealth becomes the ultimate measure of worth, we're not just bending the rules, we're rewriting them for greed, creating a system where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. The poor become invisible, their struggles ignored, the vulnerable disposable, their needs dismissed as irrelevant. And the common good, the well-being of society as a whole, is sacrificed and replaced by the relentless pursuit of the bottom line where profit trumps people every time. Scripture is clear. Hoarding wealth while ignoring the suffering of others is not just a moral failing, it's a direct condemnation of the values we claim to uphold. When leaders claim divine favor while shamelessly enriching themselves, flaunting their wealth and power, they're daring God to call their bluff, testing the limits of divine patience and inviting judgment upon themselves. You cannot serve both God and money. It is a fundamental truth. And if you try to straddle that fence, if you attempt to reconcile the irreconcilable, you will inevitably betray both, sacrificing your integrity and your soul. Greed in leadership is not just a political problem, it's a spiritual bankruptcy, a moral void that undermines the very foundations of a just and equitable society. Wrath, it's a primal emotion, a fire that burns within us all. But wrath isn't just simple anger, it's something far more insidious. It festers, it grows, and it seeks an outlet. In the realm of politics, it's vengeance disguised as leadership. It's a calculated strategy, a tool used to manipulate and control. It's the dark underbelly of power, where personal grievances become national policy. The Bible urges us to be slow to anger, to consider our actions before we lash out. It speaks of patience and understanding, of turning the other cheek. But in politics, wrath is often weaponized, carefully honed, and unleashed for maximum impact. It's a deliberate choice, a calculated risk taken in the pursuit of power. Leaders stoke division, fanning the flames of resentment and animosity. They exploit existing tensions, creating an us versus them mentality. They threaten opponents, silencing dissenting voices and creating a climate of fear. Criticism is met with hostility, and debate is replaced with intimidation. And they turn dissent into treason, branding anyone who disagrees as an enemy of the state. Independent thought is stifled and conformity is enforced. It's not about justice, about fairness or equality under the law. The scales are tipped, the system is rigged. It's about settling scores, about punishing perceived enemies and rewarding loyal allies. It's a game of political revenge played out on the national stage, and scoring points, about winning at all costs, regardless of the consequences. It's a zero-sum game, where one person's victory is another's defeat. Wrath corrodes the soul of a nation, poisoning its institutions and tearing apart its social fabric. Trust erodes and division deepens, killing empathy and dialogue, replacing reasoned debate with angry shouting matches. The ability to compromise and find common ground disappears. Leaders who govern by wrath, who rule through fear and intimidation, create a culture where fear is power, where silence is survival, and where dissent is a death sentence. And cruelty is currency, where compassion is weakness, and where the suffering of others is seen as a sign of strength. Wrath leads to destruction, not renewal. It tears down what has been built, leaving behind only rubble and resentment. Chaos, not order. It breeds instability and unrest, creating a climate of uncertainty and fear. The cycle of vengeance makes peace impossible, perpetuating a never-ending spiral of violence and retribution, and progress unthinkable. It paralyzes society, preventing it from moving forward and addressing its challenges. When anger becomes a virtue, when rage is celebrated and glorified, remember that's not righteous indignation. That's not a justified response to injustice. It's wrath, plain and simple. It's a destructive force, a poison that corrupts everything it touches, and its consequences last far beyond the next election, shaping the future for generations to come. It leaves scars that may never fully heal. Envy is more than wanting what others have, it's resenting them for it. Leaders weaponize envy, pitting us against each other and promising to drag others down instead of lifting everyone up. Envy turns neighbors into rivals and communities into battlegrounds. It fuels smear campaigns, conspiracy theories, and scapegoating. When leaders stoke envy, they erode the possibility of the common good. The Bible warns, envy breeds disorder and every evil practice. In the hands of a manipulator, envy is a shortcut to power but a dead end for justice. Ask yourself, is this about justice or just envy in a suit? Lust isn't just about sex, it's any disordered desire that puts self-gratification above all else. In leadership, lust is a betrayal of trust, whether it's sexual misconduct or the relentless pursuit of applause and attention. Leaders who excuse or enable lustful behavior send a message. Power entitles you to take what you want. That's not just a personal failing, it's an abuse of authority. Excusing lust in the name of politics isn't pragmatism, it's complicity. Lowering standards for the powerful raises the cost for everyone else. Leadership should be held to a higher standard, not exempt from it. Lust in leadership undermines justice and accountability. Gluttony isn't just overeating, it's excess in all things, especially power and attention. Leaders who are never satisfied, who demand constant praise, turn public service into a personal brand. This gluttony leads to reckless decisions and a disregard for limits. It's about a lack of self-control. Leaders who indulge every whim serve only themselves. When leaders gorge on power, they crowd out the needs of the many. The result, government for the ego of one, not the good of all. Leadership isn't about how much you can take, but how much you can give up for others. Gluttony in power is a public hazard. Sloth isn't just laziness, it's neglecting duty and avoiding responsibility. Leaders who dodge tough decisions and avoid accountability aren't wise, they're slothful. The cost is paid by those who can least afford it. Slothful leadership lets problems fester and trust wither. It's not just inaction, it's active neglect of the common good. The Bible warns, neglect your duty and you'll reap what you fail to sow. In a world desperate for engaged leadership, sloth is a betrayal. When leaders dodge responsibility, that's not strategy, it's sloth. Blasphemy isn't just using God's name in vain, it's invoking the divine to justify the very sins God condemns. When leaders commit these sins and claim God's blessing, they distort faith itself. Blasphemy cloaks sin in virtue, turning faith into a weapon and worship into a performance. This isn't just a theological problem, it's a crisis of integrity. When faith is used to excuse corruption and injustice, anything can be justified in God's name.